Hey friends, I'm Lynn Debilzen, and welcome to Redraw Your Path, a podcast where I share stories of people who have made big changes in their lives and forged their own unique paths. I talk with guests about their moments of messiness, fear, and reframing on their way to where they are now. My goal is to inspire you about the shape your life could take. So let's get inspired. Hey, y'all. I'm super thrilled to share a new interview with you this week. I had the opportunity to speak with Tina Hazen, who shared her story from West Virginia, hometown roots girl, to nurse, to professional organizer, to author and speaker. She was awesome to talk with, and I hope you take a lot away from her story. She's the owner of Think Inside the Boxx professional organizing services. In her adult life, Tina has been diagnosed with anxiety and adult ADHD. She shares her story in her new book, Life is Messy, Organizing Strategies for Your Head and Home. She's an inspiring speaker who loves to help women create systems and increase their mental health status. She is a wife, mother, sister, and friend to many. And I just immediately loved her energy and her excitement for life. And spoiler alert, there's international travel, which you know is one of my favorite things to talk with people about. So I really hope you enjoy this interview with Tina. Just a reminder, if you're enjoying Redraw Your Path, please take the time to leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps me get this podcast out to more folks. Have a great day. Welcome, Tina, to Redraw Your Path. I'm so excited to see you today.
Hello, I am so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear your story and the twists and turns. I know you've lived in a lot of places and had many phases of your career. So, Tina, where I like to start with guests is, can you share some context in terms of where and how you grew up?
Absolutely. I am from a very small little town in West Virginia, and I like to tell people it's about an hour and a half south of Pittsburgh. So if you're going by big cities, that was our closest big city. Grew up in a very little Mayberry kind of town. Had a mom and dad that were married. My mom was very homemaker-ish. I have two older sisters, and to this day, we're very close.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and I went to West Virginia University, and I am a mountaineer at heart, and I love all things West Virginia.
I don't meet many West Virginia advocates, and I love that about you.
I am one.
Cool. How big was your town? What was the population?
Probably 6,000.
Okay, cool.
I graduated with like 135 people.
Okay, and you know all of them, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's awesome. Cool. So it sounds like childhood, small town, West Virginia, mountaineer at heart.
Yes.
Youngest of three.
Youngest of three, the baby. Yeah.
Were there any, as you were growing up, like most of us grew up with some external pressures or like expectations placed on us. Can you talk about what some of those might have been for you?
I don't really know about the expectations. I have, like I had said, I have two older sisters. One did not go to college, and then one did go to college. I was a surprise baby, so they're quite a little bit older than me, 8 and 12 years older. So growing up, I was seeing their situations, and one was quite frankly negative. She got divorced and didn't have a whole lot of money. And then my other sister went to college. She had an experience of having her degree. She met her husband at college, and to this day, they're together. They both do extremely well. My sister that went to college still works as a physical therapist. And so I had those people to look up to, and I just knew I didn't want to be in the position of the one sister. Obviously, she's fine. She got remarried and she's great. There were some hard years in there. She had two little girls, and she had a job, not necessarily a career, if that makes any sense. In general, I knew I wanted to go to college. I didn't necessarily knew what I wanted to do. But at the time, I'm this young 16-and-a-half-year-old girl. I take the ACT and they make you pick something. And I was like, well, I guess I could do something medical. maybe I'll just be a nurse. And that is how I became a nurse. So I
Oh,
put on there nursing, and then colleges started sending me pamphlets in the mail about pre-nursing. And I just went with it. It was like, okay. And so I went to West Virginia, as I said, and I got there. They give you your syllabus and it tells you what to take. Again, I'm 17 years old and I'm like, oh, it says I should sign up for these classes. And so I did. I graduated in 4 years. By then, I had met my husband or my boyfriend, and then we got married in 94. And so then I was a nurse, but I didn't even ever really consider, is this what I want?
interesting.
Which is, down the road when all of these other things happened, it was kind of like, you were just so young. You don't know what you want at that moment.
It's so hard to figure that out. And then even as you get older, right? But it's the one thing we're very multidimensional. Were your parents in specific careers at all?
My mother is still alive at 83, and she still is a part-time secretary at the church
Wow.
and has done that for many years, and she loves it. And I think she'll continue to do that for her mind. And then my father, he worked at a plant. He was an electrician at a aluminum plant, and he actually passed away at a young age at 66.
Okay.
So they weren't necessarily career people. My dad had a job and he had a fine job. There was nothing wrong with his job, very middle class. And I was very average for where I grew up. I don't feel like I was super rich. I definitely don't feel like I was super poor, just more middle class.
It's interesting having your sisters be so much older than you and
I
having
know.
this, yeah, you see one of their paths and the other paths.
And it made a big influence on me because I really did not want the other path.
Did she get married very young then? It was that the path instead of college?
She did. I don't know how old she was, but I put her at 20 maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, she had moved to Florida briefly to live with my grandmother. And then I think she and her high school boyfriend had broken up just for a tiny little bit. And then she went back to West Virginia and they got married. So it was a guy that she had been dating for 7 years or something, like all through. So it was her high school sweetheart.
Interesting. Like having those two paths and then just being like, okay, nursing and showing up.
One was a dental assistant and the other one was a physical therapist. So in my mind, I was kind of like, that kind of fits the mold. Just went with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so now that we have like the context and the lay of the land for your life, I like to bookend with guests. Where and how are you currently spending your days? And then we'll go back and fill in.
Okay, so I am an empty nester. My children are grown. I have a daughter in Maryland, a daughter in Pittsburgh, and my son is in college at Penn State. So they're all three up north. I live in the Houston, Texas area. I spend my days now organizing, physically organizing, and I'm getting ready to launch my new website, which is tinahazen.com. And that is going to be about my speaking services and my organizing coaching services. I still will do physical organizing, but I'm trying to dive into online and over Zoom and being someone's accountability partner as they are trying to get organized or help their mental health, because organizing and mental health are very, very close together.
Oh, inner chaos leads to outer chaos. I believe that every day, or vice versa. Outer chaos leads to inner chaos. So
yes. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm loving it.
Awesome.
I'm really happy and it's fun learning new things. I'm learning Canva and Calendly and all the things.
So you're running your own business as a professional organizer and no longer a nurse.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I'm so curious. So let's go back and talk about, you had this really clear path. You showed up at college. They gave you like, here are the 4 years of courses.
Yes.
What was the first big way that you redrew your path in your life?
The first time I redrew my path was after I was married and I had a job. I was a registered nurse for a few years and I had 2 little girls. After the second one, I became a stay-at-home mom briefly. And then my husband's job, we were in our tiny little town in West Virginia, and my girls were 4 and almost 2. And my husband got transferred to Germany And my life, I mean, I was 29 years old. Think about this. I am a young little girl, baby, and terrified. I don't know German. I don't know anything. And I've traveled a little, but it's basically to Florida and some other places, not necessarily international travel. So the idea of packing up and moving to a foreign country was very terrifying for me. As an adult, I'm 51 now. Looking back, it was the most amazing experience. We were there 3.5 years. We traveled a lot. And I feel like that's when I grew up.
Wow.
So I wasn't working as a nurse anymore. I was a mommy. And then obviously with his company, we had built in amazing friends that a lot of them were American, or if they weren't American, they spoke English. And so we had a really good time, but it was tough. I'm not going to make it too rosy.
Yeah.
But on the whole, just a fabulous experience. And to this day, my daughter, the one that's a teacher in Maryland, she even got a minor in German. She learned German in first grade.
Oh, wow.
She still knows German. And I'm like, how cool is that?
Wow.
Anyhow, yeah. So that was my first one. We're going to another country. And I'm telling you, people are people. And I love people. And every single culture, every single country, they're doing the same thing. They have to figure out what they're going to have for dinner tonight. They have to just do the things we do. So yeah, I really have enjoyed living internationally, even though that was never really on my radar.
Yeah. Do you remember at that time when your husband came home and said, well, honey, Germany is next? Do you remember, like, did you have the conversations of, should we even do this?
Oh, yeah. So I knew that he wanted to go, and he had been taking German for quite a while. And I was just in complete, utter denial. I was like, this is never going to happen. I'm living my little life. Things are fine. And he called me, and I specifically remember him saying, are you sitting down? I was like, oh no. And I said, I'll sit down. And he said, yeah, they offered me the job. And he was so excited.
Yeah.
And I remember, do you remember that song? I don't know who sings it, but it's the end of the world as you
we
know
it.
I was singing that song, and I was like walking around like, this can't be real. And it sure was. It sure was.
So you were like, what is happening? I don't necessarily want to do this. I'm scared.
But then I did, looking back on it, I do remember thinking my options are divorce the man who is an awesome husband, awesome dad, awesome provider. There is nothing wrong with the guy, or go with him. And it's like, this isn't really even a choice.
Yeah.
If I signed up for this, I'm happy. I'm happy in my marriage. And the good news is we survived that. And I don't recommend doing any international if you're not solid with the person, because you really need to have that support while you're going through that.
Absolutely. That can be a huge jar. Do you remember, like, when you first arrived in Germany and just some of the thoughts that were going through your head? Any self-doubt?
Oh my gosh, so many. We went on a house hunting trip first. And this was a long time ago, so I got to really use my brain here. But on the house hunting trip, we had a really good time because we met up with some people that we knew. So they showed us around and took us to some restaurants and showed us the lay of the land. And they, of course, talked it up, and they knew that I was probably terrified. But on the whole, that was good. And then when we actually got there, it was just, I don't know if I wouldn't really call it chaos, but just everything's an unknown. We didn't live in a group. It wasn't like the military where they place you with a bunch of American people or a bunch of people that speak English. Our neighbors were all just completely normal. They were just normal Germans living their German life. I went to the grocery store like every day. That's what people do there. And like my daughters had little friends up the street and down the street. It would just be like an Italian family moving to America and moving down the street from you. And so I just had to go with it. Julie, let's see, in the beginning, she started in a preschool. They called it kindergarten, but it's preschool. And then Hannah was home with me. The company provided German lessons. So I went 3 days a week.
Oh, awesome.
My life was going to German lessons and taking Hannah, which is my second born. She went to like their little daycare. One of my favorite stories about that is when she had been going for a while. And of course, those daycare workers did not speak English. I will never forget the time when Hannah was probably a little over 2 and she yelled back to me, 9, which is no in German. And I'm like, my kid's talking back to me in another language.
You better speed up on those lessons.
Time out. What has happened? I really enjoyed my German class. Well, I don't know about enjoying, but I loved meeting the people. I had friends from El Salvador, India, Italy, Canada, a few from the States. So what was crazy about that is some of those people didn't speak English. I don't speak their language. So the only thing we had in common was German, which was funny because we'd get together with all our friends and we could just talk about the weather. We only had this very limited vocabulary. And of course, this was also before Google Translate. I didn't have a cell phone back then.
Oh, absolutely.
This was maybe, I think I got my first cell phone maybe the second or third year we were there, and they called them handies. Do you have a handy? And it was just so cool because I never thought I would have a lady Italian friend that doesn't speak English. How cool is that from a little small town girl from West Virginia?
Yeah. Do you remember at any point during that 3.5 years when you were there, do you remember at all thinking back, oh, a year ago, I was in West Virginia in my hometown. I never would have seen this.
That happened all the time because I'm like, is this even real? Do I live here with my children? Oh my gosh. And then after a while, I was just really excited to go back to the States because I knew my girls would eventually get into elementary school and I wanted to be more involved in PTO or whatever they did at school. And I wanted to be able to understand what was going on. And that was exciting for me to eventually come back. And then when he did get a job back in the States, it was our first time in Texas. I was terrified. All I knew about Texas was it was hot and it had big bugs. So I was afraid. I wasn't really excited.
And they want their independence.
Well, yeah, then there's that too.
So you moved back to the US. Was that the next big way you redrew your path, or what was the next big way?
No, the next big thing I will talk briefly about. I had an RN job, very part-time. I had a baby. I had my little boy in Germany. Okay. So when I moved, I had 2 girls. When I came back, I had 2 girls and a baby boy. So at that time, he was less than a year, probably. I decided I should go back, and part-time is great for nursing. So I looked into a job and I was working at an eye surgery center in Houston, which I absolutely loved. And we ended up only being in that little town for 2 years. And then my husband went back to West Virginia, which I call bonus years because I never in a million years thought we'd be back. But we ended up going back for 4 years. So when we were in Seabrook for 2 years and I was a nurse, I was loving my life. I had zero interest in doing anything else. In fact, it wasn't even on my radar. But then when we moved back to West Virginia, I knew deep in my soul, I wasn't going to find a nursing job exactly like the one that I had. And that was my, like, what do I do? I remember thinking I could go back and get my master's in nursing. I could just do a basic job in nursing, which I didn't really want to do. I didn't want to do night shifts, or I could do something completely different. Okay. So my second redraw my path was most likely when I am a big sleeper. I love to sleep and I sleep well. And one night I just could not sleep. And by then there was this thing called Google and there was a computer. And so I was just Googling and I'm like, what can I do? What can I do? What am I good at? And I have no idea. I think it was God because I really don't know how I would have ever found this. But I found this group. And at the time, it was called the National Association of Professional Organizers. Now it's called the National Association of Productivity and Organizing. Okay. To make a very long story short, I am a member of that. I'm also on the board for Houston, Texas. So there is a way to look at people's websites. And I like all over the country. And so I would look at their website and read about what they do. And I was like, wait a second. If this is not me, I don't know what is. I decided this is what I'm doing. Of course, I'm a nurse. I don't know how to run a business. I don't know anything. So I obviously had a lot to learn. I started reading books. I got a mentor. I had to create a logo, meet with website people, all the things that you do in the beginning. I believe that was 16 years ago. And
Wow.
so I dove into, I'm going to be a professional organizer. And then all the years have gone by. And then last year, I wrote a book. So
Okay.
that's what my little earrings are. My book is called Life is Messy, and it is about mental health and organizing because I personally have anxiety and ADHD. And so I felt with all of my life experiences, I could help people out there.
Absolutely. Do you remember? And I'm so excited to get into the mental health conversation because it's
Yeah.
so important. Do you remember when you decided, okay, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to be a professional organizer?
Yeah.
What was coming up for you? Was there any fear? Were you like, I have no idea
Oh,
how to do this?
oh, every day. And to be honest, I'm still learning every single day. So it's not like you memorize some things and you check mark it and you know it. I feel like this is an evolving thing. So to
Hmm.
answer your question, yeah, I had no idea. I got some clients. I just dove in and I learned as I went, to be honest.
Did you
Yeah.
have to reframe for yourself? I am Tina, the mom and RN, to I am
Yes.
Tina, the entrepreneur. And
Absolutely.
okay, what does that look
Absolutely.
like?
And it's really hard because I'm not going to lie, moving around makes it very hard, especially when
Hmm.
my business is word of mouth and it's going to people's homes and it's really spreading the word in the area where I live. And then I'm finally doing great and it's time to start all over in a new location. So that was, was and is really hard. So I
Hmm.
feel like the organizing consultations that I'm going to start doing, my coaching is going to help that tremendously because if I have a computer, I can help anyone anywhere. And so I'm
Absolutely.
really looking forward to being able to do that.
Have you struggled with anger or frustration around that moving around piece? Because I know you mentioned you've moved Texas 3 times. You mentioned before to me
Oh,
Mexico
girl,
City.
you need to read my book.
I
I
do. I
talk all
do.
about it. Oh, yeah. My husband's amazing. We'll be almost married 30 years. But I
Wow.
tell him often that I wish I would have married someone that had a business that couldn't leave a place. Horrible because I am a roots kind of girl. As I had told you, I grew up in one little place, and that's still to me, that's home. And and the largest time we were anywhere was the second time we were in Texas, and we were there 7 years, which was amazing. But once again, it's okay, here we go again. And
Mm.
from there, we went to another foreign country. So, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Crazy.
If you had to say the top ways that you've grown because of being both, you said you're a roots girl, but
Mhm.
also being forced, if you will, or
Worley.
given the opportunity, if you will, to move around so much, what are the ways that
Yeah.
you, Tina, have grown?
I have definitely grown. I have been stretched to the limit. I will answer that question that I just thought of someone that talked to me about they were going to move from West Virginia to North Carolina, and they ended up doing that. And I remember writing her like a Facebook message, do it, your kids will adjust, blah, blah, blah. I was like, go. I was the cheerleader. And it ended up working out really well for her. But it's funny to me that I am that person because I've lived it. And my kids have learned so much resilience. They've all gone all over. They're extremely well traveled and they love to travel. And I love that about them. And I think that has to do with my husband taking those risks and me saying, let's do it.
Hmm.
Maybe not excitedly, but saying, let's
Hmm.
do it. And so I don't know. I don't remember. What was the question again?
Well, I mean, you've answered it. It's you've been open to those risks, and because of that,
And I don't want to sound like he said this is the way it is, but I married him and he's the main breadwinner. And so, okay, if he's happy, I'm happy. And if I'm happy, he's happy. He's been a good sport throughout the years. And this was a big change to go from being a nurse into being an entrepreneur. And he's been very supportive. So that's good.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Are there any other big ways you've redrawn your path that you want to share?
I think it's just being extremely vulnerable when I released my book because being an organizer is one thing, but putting your entire dirty laundry out into the world, which is what I did in this book. I talk about crazy symptoms with anxiety that have to do with my GI system. I'm pretty much brutally honest, and was a little nerve-wracking to do that, to be honest, because I do talk about my story. And then I interviewed 7 other people. I call them the faces of anxiety in my book. They tell me their stories. The book is called Life is Messy. And so we jump into a mess in the kitchen, a mess in the laundry room, a mess in, and we go down all through the house. And so that's kind of the way the book is set up. And so for me, actually pushing the button that said publish, it was just so scary. And I mean, now it's out there. It is what it is. And I hope so many people read it, and I hope they learn so much. But I guess it was just me having, I don't know the word, just being vulnerable enough to just do it and saying, this is me, and I really hope you can learn from this. Yeah, that's my big one.
Yeah. Okay. As a fellow anxiety sufferer, I have panic disorder and definitely can talk mental health all day. Do you remember after you put yourself out there like that, the vulnerability was probably huge? I'm imagining the feelings that comes up. It's regret, fear, pride, excitement, like all of those blends.
Well, it wasn't necessarily regret, but extreme fear. I was very proud of myself, but in a really weird way. Like someone would say, "Oh, you're a published author." And to me, I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I guess I am." Like I felt very, like almost, I don't even, the word's not ashamed, but I'm like, yeah, but if you read it, you're going to find out stuff. So I have mixed feelings about the book. I love the book. I love that it's out there. Yeah. And that's going to be another big part of my marketing with the new website, is trying to get it out to more people.
Do you feel like you're still struggling with that identity of author?
Oh, for sure. For sure. In fact, now it's, what do I even call myself? RN, because I still do have my license. So RN, professional organizer, author, speaker, coach. Like, what am I? I don't even know what I. So I need like an identity. I don't know. I'm having an identity crisis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny how this has all morphed, because as I had told you, I thought I was writing a book and it would just help my business a little. It wasn't really in my head what would happen after.
Okay.
And then when people contacted me about speaking at their like employee resource group at their company over Zoom, I was like, wait a second, I would love to do that. How does that work? So then I took a speaking class on how to do these things and how to be in touch with different people. And then from there, I hired a business coach, and she's like, oh my goodness, you need to be coaching online. And I'm like, wait a second, that's a thing. I guess I could do that. And as an empty nester, there's no reason why I can't pursue these things. I have the time, I have the energy, I feel great. And it's one of those things. Okay, so if I travel, I mark it off that week, or even do it from in a different location. So I'm looking forward to, helping people all over the country, internationally, wherever.
Yeah, that's so cool. I'm thinking back to Tina taking the ACT and just checking, I don't know, nursing. And
That's the truth.
Yeah, because I'm assuming that time you just thought, I'm going to be here in West Virginia and I'm going to be a nurse the rest of my life, right?
I didn't know where I would land, but I certainly didn't think I'd say, I'm going to live in Mexico. I'm going to live in Germany. I'm going to live in Pittsburgh. I'm going to live 3 times in Houston. Never in a billion years. That would be like, oh, I'm going to go to the moon tomorrow. Like I never would have said that.
Cool.
But I feel like my journey has just been so cool. And I really enjoy sharing it with people and saying, you know what? I don't regret it. It's been so cool. And I've learned so much. My eyes are open to other cultures. I have a very sympathetic heart for people that live here that don't speak English. You know what? I was in a country where I didn't speak their language. I don't want to get political, but I'm saying that's what they speak at home. So, I mean, yes, learn. And yes, I tried, whatever. But on the whole,
yeah,
it's a thing.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you've learned so much from your journey.
I
Tina,
definitely
is
have.
there any advice you would give to others who are considering redrawing their path or wondering what's next for me or considering the opportunity? What advice would you give?
To be quite honest, no matter what it is, I would say go for it. If you try and you fail, it's just a learning experience. If you try and it goes well, yay. Well, number one, try. Number two, go for it. I really don't feel like you're going to regret it, especially if it's been on your heart for a while, depending on what it is. I never, ever thought that I would take a class on keynote speaking, and it all came from because I wrote a book. And that was at the age of 50. So I feel age should not even be a factor. And if you still have your health and you still have your mind, you can still do anything that you want to do. So I personally say go for it.
Cool. That is amazing advice and really jives with the vibe of Redraw Your Path.
I'm so happy.
Yeah. Tina, is there anything else you'd want to share with folks?
Again, I just thank you for having me on. And I just absolutely love sharing my organizing passion, and I would love to help anyone out there. If you want to have some organizing coaching, get in touch with me.
Awesome. Where can people find you?
All right. So the first website is thinkinsidetheboxx.com. Box has two X's. That is my original organizing website. My new website is going to be tinahazen.com. It's TINAHAZEN.com. And it will be probably up before the end of June or by the end of June. And then I am on LinkedIn, Tina Jones Hazen. I'm on Instagram and I'm on TikTok at Think Inside Boxx. It's Tina Hazen, author speaker. So I think that's all.
Cool. You're in all the places, and I'll include all of that information in the show notes. And thank you so much, Tina, for being willing to share your story with me.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. It was so fun. And I really hope the people that are listening just got a taste of my crazy life and my messy life, and how, even if you're moving around and life is crazy, it's all worth it.
I love that. It's all worth it, and it's all going to be messy. So
yes,
going.
And be ready for that. Be ready for the messy parts.
Awesome. Thank you, Tina.
Yay. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Redraw Your Path with me, Lynn Debilzen. If you liked the episode, please rate and review. That helps more listeners find me. And don't be shy. Reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn, and sign up for my e-newsletter at redrawyourpath.com. I can't wait to share more inspiring stories with you. See you next week.